Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, featuring today's top directors sharing behind-the-scenes stories of their latest films and insights into the craft of directing. Please take a second to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Dan Fogelman's new romantic drama, Life Itself. The film centers on the story of a young New York couple who experience unexpected twists in their journey from their college romance to marriage and the birth of their first child, creating reverberations that echo across continents and through lifetimes. In addition to Life Itself, Mr. Fogelman's directorial credits include the feature film Danny Collins. Following a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Mr. Fogelman spoke with director Ron Howard about filming Life Itself. During their conversation, Mr. Fogelman discusses the speedy production schedule, his transition from writer to director, and working with the translator to truly capture the story in the Spanish language.
That's for you, Ron.
Well deserved. Yeah. No, well deserved. Great job. We all really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It's complicated, rich, and bold.
Yeah.
I have so many questions about the movie. But even before that, I just thought I'd ask for a second about just your transition. Yeah. Into directing. And and the kind of command you have of the medium. Were you always thinking about directing? Or was it writing first? Was it producing? Was it acting? Was it just the medium in general?
Yeah, I was definitely a writer first, and still am probably to a degree. I'm learning as a director. I was never trained. I didn't go to film school. I'm kind of self-taught. Just from having made a lot of stuff and getting to be on set with a lot of directors. And it's been very easy for me at times to kind of turn things over to directors that I get to work with and trust and learn. There's been one or two times where I really felt like I wanted to be in command of how the story was exactly told. I had this one in my bones a little bit, and so it got me there. But yeah, I'm learning.
And in your experience, I was thinking a little bit about this, some of the transitions, and while totally character driven, it's very cinematic. Yeah. What about your experience with Pixar? Did that serve you?
It did.
When you began directing?
Yeah, it did. That was literally, I started in this business. I was a production assistant around town. I worked for Howie Mandel and Jimmy Kimmel. And then I wrote a screenplay that never got made, and I gave it to a buddy of mine, and it got me agents and managers. And they took that screenplay, they sent it to Pixar, who was looking for a writer of their new film, a young writer who they could pay no money and would live up there indefinitely. And I got that job, and that became Cars. So that was essentially really my second screenplay I ever wrote. And while you're up there, the way you work on animation is you're just constantly writing and remaking the movie. It's almost as if you make a movie and then you screen the movie and then you say, okay, that sucks. We're going to lose that character. We're going to lose that act. But I did like that scene. I like that actor. And then remake the whole movie again and again and again and again. And so you are going to film school. You're going, oh, I see. My dialogue doesn't work as well when I do it that way. But when I do it that way, people seem to be laughing. And you really get trial by fire.
And in that situation, do you find yourself interfacing with animators and storyboard artists?
And that's how. And so John Lasseter up there was the guy who kind of directed that film and showed me how he would do things. And yeah, you write a scene and you bring it to a group of storyboard artists who are basically cartoonists, animators, but they're not animating computer animation. They're sketching. And then you put my voice as Lightning McQueen or as the guy from Tangled, and we put it up editorially and see how it plays without any animation being done, none of the expensive stuff. So it's myself working with the storyboard artists who are going, hey, I think we should have the camera swirling around Rapunzel as she's sitting and trying to get out of the tower. And so you're designing shots with a group of guys, and I'm not quite getting the jargon or the lensing, but I am beginning to understand how to shoot things. Yeah.
Did you have storyboard artists help you with this at all, or was it all?
No, we did this. We storyboarded out the every time people were getting hit by buses because we had very limited time to shoot that in New York City. We had a very small budget on this film. This film was about, I think, $13 million, which for this film was very small. And we had 2 days in New York City from like midnight to 7 a.m. And so that required like a complicated filmmaking plan of like, how are we going to get these shots done? I had Sam Jackson for an hour. You know, I was not comfortable having Annette Bening lying on a street for very long. So I wanted to like take care of, to make it all right. Cause we had to do all of the stuff like, when the teenage girl is looking at her parents through her POV, how are we going to shoot this so we can use the same performance that we're actually using in their coverage from the scene much earlier? How are we going to shoot the reverse of the bus through the window inside the bus? So that was really complicated.
Well, as a writer, also an experienced, TV producer, showrunner, spent so much time in the editing room on all your shows, I'm sure. Do you find yourself in a complicated situation like that? You said you storyboarded the bus stuff, but in general, do you tend to start your work with the actors with a shot list, with a specific plan as you've been writing it? Have you been picturing visuals and so forth?
A little bit. I mean, I'm obviously a very dialogue heavy writer, and so I try and create flexibility in the shooting so that it doesn't all get too precise, because it's heightened dialogue and it's a lot of it, right? Everybody's speaking a little bit more romantically than we speak in real life. So A, the actors have to be really good, which they all are, and then B, if you get a little imprecise, I think it can make it naturalize it a little. So we shot the script, and I did have the plan, but when Oscar Isaac and Olivia Wilde are in bed, there's a freedom there in the way we are kind of holding the camera, and the way I'm allowing them to treat the dialogue that hopefully captures an intimacy that can't just come like from an exacting stage play. When we're very handheld here, we never laid one track at all. We looked at like Tree of Life, and we looked at a lot of how do you take the dramedy and kind of treat it in that way and capture a bit of that feeling. My DP shot a lot by going into what we would call backpack mode, by just putting the camera on his own back. It was this big and just kind of running around with people, and it was the image we wanted, but it had enough of that hopefully it kind of felt like you were voyeuristically watching life.
And I missed the credits, but who's the cinematographer?
Brett Pollack. He's a very young guy who's going to be a really big deal. He's done he did Short Term 12 and all of Destin's movies thus far, as well as a bunch of other things. But he's he's in his early 30s.
Your first time working with him?
Yes.
Yeah.
I worked with Steve Yedlin, my first film that I directed, who's done Star Wars and all of Rian Johnson's stuff, and he was off in London, and so Brett had shot the pilot for This Is Us,
right.
And I just had really liked the way he worked.
Yeah. It's just remarkable the way it unfolds, and in terms of, the actors must have been in heaven. Although I'm sure if you were working quickly, they must have felt some of that stress and strain. But talk a little bit about your rapport with actors and the way you develop the characters.
When you have actors like this, I'm sure you're not sitting and teaching Oscar Isaac how to act or redirecting him. You're trying to make everybody comfortable so that they can just be natural with all the dialogue. We had a blast. Every single person had a blast on the movie. It's a lovely group of actors. The first 2 days of shooting, we had a very tight schedule. We actually had a very loose schedule. We had a very tight schedule with Oscar Isaac, who was very busy. And then in New York, we had a great amount of time for an indie film. And then Spain was completely compressed. We shot all of Spain in 7 days. Which was like half the film. We shot at one location, which was this glorious farmhouse with its own, olive fields, and Antonio Banderas would get dressed upstairs, and we just banged that out in Spain. But in New York, it was pretty lax. We'd be wrapping at 3 and going out drinking with the crew every day because we didn't know what to do, because the first week was all Oscar, and we had no time with him. So Annette Bening and Oscar started the movie. We went into the therapy office, and that was we shot 40 pages of dialogue between them in 2 days. And I would just move the camera around the room, and we took it in chunks, and then at the end, we did it all together like a stage play, and it was awesome. We did everything up until the gunshot. which required some technical stuff, and we'd just take it all the way there. And I got to watch Oscar Isaac and Annette. And so all I would do was kind of explain to them what part, the plan of that day. Here's we're going up to this part today, and I think we'll call it. And then I would say, I'm going to start on Oscar. I would keep them informed. I felt Annette's an actor who's like a racehorse, and as long as she kind of knows exactly what's going on, it takes away that stress for her. So I like to communicate a lot. And I would say once in a while, I would say like, hey, Oscar, like, let's pull back on the emotion. Let's take one that's a little funnier and a little lighter when you're talking about the heavy stuff. But for the most part, it was really just like sitting at a play and watching people.
Yeah, remarkable.
Yeah.
That's been amazing.
It was pretty awesome.
Well, performances are terrific throughout. And I assume you're fluent in Spanish.
I'm not. And so that was a big challenge. I wrote it in English, had it translated to Spanish, worked with a translator, memorized the script, and then started taking Spanish lessons again. I speak Spanish, but not. I was good in high school, okay in college, and now it's been 20 years. So I had to brush back up. We worked with after we wrapped in New York, we hired an entirely Spanish crew and cast in Spain. So every cameraman was Spanish, and I tried to only direct in Spanish, which was a disaster, but it made everybody laugh. And so when the actors, and I give flexibility to the actors, I don't care about the syntax. If they say instead of the, and if they change a little bit of words here and there, I think that's part of the process. And if something really bothers me, I'll ask them to go back to script, but it rarely does. In Spain, when an actor would go off book for a line, like I normally allow in English, I would lose because they're talking so fast, and a sentence goes awry from what you have in your mind's eye, and suddenly you've lost your place. It's like losing your place in a book. And I would just be like, I think Banderas is wonderful here. I have no idea what he's saying. And so that it was a challenge, but it was really fun.
Yeah. Well, did a writer come in and do the translation?
Yeah.
For you?
With me, yeah. And would explain to me like, hey, I want to go off book here because it wouldn't translate properly. And then my big thing became, it was because I had this rhythm in English in my head, how far can I stretch the English translation on screen? So it caused me to actually go into a bunch of subtitled films and like kind of talk to people and talk to subtitle companies saying, how exacting are they being here? Because when we watch subtitles films, you're not saying, that's not exactly what they're saying. You're either reading or you're either listening. And so we tried to do it the right way by the same rules. Yeah.
This is a little bit more of a writer question, but you're a writer-director in this case. You're going to direct it. Talk to me a little bit about the thematics of it, and maybe the inspiration for the movie, the idea, the tone, the approach. It's quite original.
Yeah, I mean, I just wrote it. I sat down. I wrote the first 5 pages with Sam Jackson. I had no idea. I thought it was an interesting way to start a film, and I just kept writing. And after about a year, I had the screenplay, and it's very much the movie. I revised as I went. It evolved as I went. And then I finished it, and that's when I was like, oh, I see. Because it kind of was like I stepped out of myself, aside of myself. When I had written films like Crazy Stupid Love, I normally have a process where I think about the film for a while globally in my head, and then I go away and write it very quickly. And I knew Crazy Stupid Love would be a movie about a group of people who all love the wrong people, and at the end you reveal this son is actually the daughter, the girl is actually the daughter of the dad. This I didn't have any plan, I just wrote. And then at the end, I was like, oh, I see what I'm chasing. I've talked about it quite a bit, but my mom had passed away 10 years ago. She died very suddenly, very unexpectedly. She died in surgery. So for me, it was kind of a version of the bus crash. It was kind of, I would describe it as watching your person, like losing your person in a car accident. You're driving the car, and you're watching the whole thing, and you don't get a scratch on you. And that was kind of how it felt. And then I went into a really dark hole, like the movie would say, it was the body blow of my life that kind of took me to my knees. And then a year to the day after I met my wife. And so I wasn't consciously thinking about any of that as I was writing the film, but I think that's very much what it's born out of when I'm psychoanalyzing myself. Yeah.
And the shifts in time, were they just sort of evolved during the writing, and did you refine that further, during the rewrite process? Yeah,
my process is I kind of rewrite as I go usually. So my process, like very structurally, is I'll write let's call it 7 to 10 pages a day. And then for the next 5 days of writing, I always go back to the first 7 or 10 pages each time and revise them. I'll sometimes go, oh, none of that worked. I'll cut that all out, and then I'll add to it, and then I'll go back. And then at a certain point, the process starts moving along. I'm no longer going back to pages 1 through 7. I'm starting on page 35 and kind of doing that until I get to the end. So by the time I'm finished, that was very much the script, and the script is almost exactly what's on the screen right now. There were very few rewrites because it was so intricately kind of had to be woven. You couldn't start pulling threads out. Yeah, so that was the actors kind of all came in. I kind of worked a couple of things with Oscar and Antonio, but not a lot, and that was kind of, it just held.
Yeah.
So playing in time was, it was almost like you couldn't pull the strings out too much because everything else just kind of starts collapsing upon itself.
So that answers the question. In terms of post, it was mostly a matter of just putting it together as planned.
Yeah, and finding the right performances and hopefully tone, and it's a tonal challenge of the film because it's meant to be 7 different tones, and so the beginning is very odd and very funny, and there are parts of it where you're in a really sweet romantic comedy, and then there are parts that are obviously very dark and dramatic. And so I think there's figuring out things like in editorial is figuring out after Oscar's suicide, which is obviously the big kind of shock and meant to be to kind of how do you get the audience back from that? How do you give everybody enough time to be able to say, and so choosing to just kind of hold on the empty room for quite a while to kind of give that breath, and then finding the tone and the timing of when Mandy Patinkin talks to the little girl, which is where people start coming back into the film again a little bit. They start going, okay, like I'm not going to walk out of this movie theater right now. And so finding that is a real editorial challenge. But I edited I shot this between the 2 seasons of my TV show. And so I edited as we were shooting it because I knew I wasn't going to quite have time to come back and edit. And so when I came back, we really started screening en masse because I wanted to see how it would play.
And did you learn much from the screenings? Or?
We did. I mean, what we learned that was surprising was like, I thought the movie's coming out next week on like 3,000 screens. Like I never thought that was going to happen. It was a small film. I thought it would come out in one theater in New York and one theater in Los Angeles, and if people liked it, maybe some other people would get to see it, and my family would never see it. Maybe they'd see it on an airplane one day. And so what started happening.
You don't have Amazon Prime?
No, yeah, exactly. No, and so yeah, we started screening, and the response was so strong. Particularly, we took it to Kansas City, and I was like unsure if an audience would go with all the tonal shifts and the Spanish, and it was a very rewarding experience going to Kansas City. And Banderas has a moment or a line in the middle of his 12-minute monologue when it's just in Spanish, and you can hear a house laugh in Spanish in Kansas City, and we're like, wow, something that's pretty cool. Like this, it's playing, and obviously the crying was something that started happening, and people were having a really strong emotional reaction. And so that we learned a couple of things in the testing, but really it was kind of like very validating on this one, where sometimes you kind of like don't know what to do. Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I'm kind of curious about one thing. Your experience is so immediate right at this moment, in terms of both mediums, movies and television, and of course, I think we all feel those lines are blurring pretty significantly, and yet there still are some differences. So you've written for both. You haven't really directed television, have you?
I have not.
Yeah. But you certainly, as a showrunner, I understand it totally. Talk about the differences, if you or differences that you think still exist. This contrast between movies and television as a sort of a discipline. Yeah.
Well, the lines are certainly blurring even from when I started doing it. I mean, I think for something to hold as a film, you need to have a plot line, even if it's a small film, that compels, that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that, to me, that's like one of the biggest things is episodes of television need to have beginning, middle, and ends, but the end is really just something to set you forth to the continuation into the next episode. This really, you need to have a plot that I think draws people in. And when I make films, or when I've worked on films, like it's getting outdated, but it's for this process. Hopefully you're lucky enough to get a group of people in a room, and so that you can feel a laugh or the emotion of a room, and you can feel an audience kind of having to focus for 2 hours. There is something about television. I was very excited this year to show, or last year it was, to show my family early episodes of my television show. They were in town. I was like, everybody's talking about my show. Do you want to see it? And I noticed as I was showing it, they were all on their phones. And I said, like, Dad, I've seen this before. Like, I don't need to play this for you. And he said, this is how we watch TV. And I remember thinking, that's okay because people are in the comfort zone, but you don't get people's rapt attention on a screen for 2 hours necessarily. And so for me, that's a little bit of the difference. Not like I want people tuning out of a show, but to me, like, you have to have that plot that dictates people coming to a movie theater.
And from a directorial side,
yeah,
what sort of differences do you still find?
I think bigger. I mean, I think there's a scope to film that TV doesn't have to be very successful. I think our TV shows are getting bigger now with all the Netflix and Amazon and all that stuff happening. The concepts are getting bigger, and people's television screens are literally getting bigger.
Plus, you can shoot faster,
and you can shoot faster.
Cameras are, I mean, you can get more for the price at the price point, and in the time.
Yeah, and same goes the opposite way for film too, because film is getting smaller in that way, where because you can run, it's not my style, but if you want to run 17,000 hours of improvisation and choosing the edit bay, it's not going to kill your day necessarily, and it's not going to cost you a fortune. So I think the worlds are kind of shifting in that way. But honestly, like, sometimes for me, like, I don't see that much of a difference in terms of tone, because ultimately you're telling a story, and the kind of stuff I like doing, and a lot of the stuff obviously you've done so successfully, it mixes comedy with drama. And that's all about tone and intimacy of the moments. And it doesn't matter if you're watching it on a giant screen or on a little screen at home sometimes to capture that.
Yeah. Do you? I mean, you're so busy with your career as a TV producer, writer. Are you already looking forward to your next film as a director, or do you have other things to do now for a little while and waiting for an idea?
Yeah, maybe. I'm tired. I need a little break. My wife wants me to take a break. Yeah. We had this really strange, between us directors, we had a strange experience this week. We took the film to the Toronto Film Festival and we opened it there. And, I've now been screening this movie for a year. I've screened it for everyone from Warren Beatty and Barbra Streisand, who, to audiences, to critics early. And we kind of had a sense of how it's playing and how fancy people are responding. We went to Toronto and the film opened and it got like a 5-minute standing ovation. It was very exciting. And then the critics just came out with their teeth bared. And it's been so surprising. It's been a little confounding to us. We expected there would be a portion of cynical critics that wouldn't be able to tolerate this film, and we were prepared for that. The viciousness and the bringing my TV show into it was a very strange experience. So when you ask, am I excited to direct my next movie? My legs have been taken out from me a little bit because it was just such a bizarre experience so far. But I'm excited because audiences have been continuing to respond to it, and I think it'll balance out. But you really put yourself, especially with a film like this, it is a strange exposing feeling when you put something out in this day and age as dark and cynical as the world is, and something that kind of, it's been a bizarre week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to, a little bit of the DGA cone of silence. The reality is that when there's something to write about as sort of significant as, here's this show, here's a movie, here's the individual involved, they're sort of related in some ways, not related in other ways. And yet it's so distinctively different and sort of. I think my guess is that all dies down and a very unique, very distinctive movie stands on its own.
I think so.
And I think all these things kind of become what they become.
Yeah.
Kind of after that moment where they're doing their own thing, which is to try to be noticed or be loud or something themselves. Yeah. So it's just unique.
It's been interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. And it seems like such an odd thing to be vicious about this particular film. It's like you know what I mean? Like a film with
I haven't read them, so I don't know. I can laugh here.
They've been pretty weird, but anyway, it is true, and I think it's been nice watching audiences react and having people reach out and And so it's been nice, and I'm sure it will balance out.
Oh, yeah, I know it will. Your actors must be in heaven. I mean, it's impeccable performances.
Yeah, and they're also lovely. You know what I found? I don't know if you found it, but when you're dealing in this tone, which is like you're hopefully mixing a bunch of tones, and you want people to be charmed and have comedy, and then also have. God, it helps if your actors are actually really nice people, because it comes through, I think, on the screen, and they really are kind of all great. And so yeah, I think they're all really excited, and I think for like the Spanish portion is really exciting for me because I think Banderas is so great in this role.
It's fantastic.
And he's such a movie star that people forget what a gifted actor he is.
Imagine we have
Picasso.
him. He's in Picasso, and he was just he was really stunning to behold.
He's amazing,
and I think he's hitting a kind of a stride where and I still think he loves it and wants to prove and test himself, but also prove what he's always felt is that he has a lot to offer.
Yeah, he's so wonderful. It does feel like he really is like realizing like how reminding himself how good he is again, and he's so good in Picasso. He did my film before Picasso, and so I actually got to see Picasso after I'd already seen the film. I'm like, man, he's rolling right now.
Yeah. Well, the from a music standpoint, I mean, did you always have the Dylan song as a kind of a thematic, as a center post in a way?
I did. I started writing with the Sam Jackson scene. I put on my iTunes, that album came on. I started listening to it. I wrote it into the opening because I just started hearing it, and I kept going back to that album as I was writing. And eventually I said, what if this was the soundtrack? And I loved it. I've always loved the album. Wasn't really thinking about even getting the movie made. I was just writing. But I had made it to the end of the film, and I knew how the film was going to end now in my head. I wasn't quite sure how the Dylan stuff was all going to tie together. And I was in a bookstore with my wife, and standing in the middle of the bookstore was on one of those staff pick tables where the staff was an anthology of Dylan criticism, like staring me in the face. And I opened it up to the album, and this writer, this music critic, was bashing the song "Make You Feel My Love," calling it the lone wart on this otherwise very unsparing album. And I was like, oh my God. And it was Valentine's Day. My wife and I were downtown. We were in a bookstore. And I told my wife we had to go home because I had to go finish the movie because I figured out like what the theme is. And it was vicious. The guy was really coming after the one song. And I was like, that's the song everybody knows, And so I thought that was so funny. But yeah, and then after I had written it, like many things in the movie, like Sam Jackson or other things, everyone was like, this is so great, and I love the Dylan. How did you get him to give you all the music? I'm like, oh, I don't know Bob Dylan. And so then we had to go to Bob Dylan's camp and convince him to give us like 12 songs, and it was a process, but
And back to the logistics, you talked about how quickly you had to do, the stuff in New York and in Spain. What was your shooting schedule?
I feel like we were around 33 days. 33 to 35 days. I think we're in that range. We cut a couple of days at the end in Spain because it was tight.
And in terms of your relationship with Amazon as a studio, you brought the script as a spec script or something you?
No, it was actually it was an unusual one. This one. So what had happened with the movie was I just made it independently financed with Film Nation, who made Arrival and Big Sick last year, and we didn't have a studio. We made the movie, and then after it was done, we had gotten into Sundance. There were high hopes of what was going to happen in Sundance. I had been screening the movie for such fancy, highfalutin people that people were starting to talk about the emotional reaction to the movie. And a bunch of studios came in preemptively saying, we want to not let you take it. And they all came and screened the movies, and then kind of had a bunch of studios came in, and Amazon wound up getting it.
Oh, I see.
And so Amazon basically picked it up to distribute it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but without normally the kind of thing that would happen at a film festival.
Yeah, but also pretty great at Film Nation too.
They were awesome, and they were also. I had these great producers. Glenn Basner runs Film Nation, but these guys, Aaron Ryder and Marty Bowen. I don't know if you've ever come across them, and they were so supportive from go. And we were somebody the other day. I was doing a Q&A, and they were like, "Was it hard to convince anybody to make a movie for $13 million where half of it's going to be in Spanish?" And I realized, holy shit, no, it wasn't hard. Nobody ever challenged that. And you realize, like, when you have really supportive people around you, sometimes it was so easy because they made it so easy that you realize it.
We got to wrap it up, but I have one last question. Stylistically, shifting over to English for the mother's final speech, Was that, did you shoot it two ways? Did you just make the leap? Did you decide that was you just made the commitment?
It was written that way, and I thought it would be a cool, like, final kind of thing on playing with who's telling the story and how we're telling it. And then the actress did it. What happened with her name's Laia Costa. She only started acting professionally about 5 years ago. She's now won BAFTAs. I mean, she's crazy. And I'd cast all the American roles and Antonia, and was going to go over to Spain to cast the Spanish roles. She had gotten her hands on the script and got me. She read on to her husband on camera every scene in the movie that she was in, starting with that final scene. And she basically auditioned. I still have it basically exactly as the final scene is shot, like this close to the camera. And I saw it and I said, oh my, well, that's it. And I never read another actor for the part. I just cast her. But yeah, it was always in English.
Well, so many great details. I'm frankly looking forward to seeing it again.
Thank you.
Because when I think just to track it all and the subtlety and the twists and turns, remarkable achievement. And thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You're like my hero. I can't believe that I'm here with you. So.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, you can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll have a lot more for you in the coming weeks as award season approaches, including Q&As from Drew Goddard, Bradley Cooper, and Damien Chazelle, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Take a moment to rate and review us on iTunes. You can help fellow cinephiles find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.